Hey friends, Chris Maholka here. This video, or actually two-part video, is going to be for my friends that like to make bass poppers and panfish flies and saltwater, musky, whatever kind of fly, using high-density foam heads to make them float. Now, if you've watched my #1 video on how to make popper heads, I use a regular density and a punch system to punch the foam. And that's well and good for the light density foam. When you get to the high density stuff, the really hard stuff, you need to use a system of drilling to make a nice head out of this. So in this video, I'm going to show you, the first video is going to be how to drill the heads and how to shape them. The second video is going to be how to apply the high density foam to a hook. And I'm not talking about cutting it in half and gluing it on and making it fly with an ugly seam down the bottom. I'm going to show you how to put this on the hook with another method that makes them look nice and clean and even, so you have a really pretty fly to present to the fish and to your buddies as well. Let's get started on this. When I say high density foam, what I'm looking at are things that don't have apparent open cells in them. Some of the fly foams that you get, some of the craft store foam, will be really open cell. This is really a tight closed cell, a fairly stiff type of foam. Well, like I say, you can get it in the pre-made factory cylinders, or you can do your own. And what I'm going to show you on making your own is how to take something like this. This is part of an old paddle board out of my kids' swimming pool, or an old yoga block that I've started cutting down. I'll show you how to do that. And punch heads out of this, because they will not absorb any water into the cells. They will last a lot longer as far as flotation, and also if you've got toothy fish, they won't get chewed up as easy. And this will even work for things like I've seen guys trying to make popper heads out of old flip-flop shoes. So you need something that's going to cut this material, not just put a hammer and a punch on it and punch through it. The way we're going to cut this foam is with a tool made for woodworking, and they're called plug cutters. They're made to cut out a plug of a certain size to fill in over the top of a screw when you're doing woodworking. A set of them comes in 4 sizes, usually, or 3 sizes, or 5 sizes, but this set of 4 covers a 1/4 inch up to a 1/2 inch, which are perfect for doing a lot of different size popper heads. Now the way these work is you've got a beveled sharp edge right here that starts, when it goes into the material, starts cutting, and then it slices its way around as it travels. So you put constant pressure on, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a slight taper to this. You can see it kind of in that picture there, that this digs in first and goes around into the rest of the cutting blade. One thing that's imperative on these is that they're sharp, or you'll tear your foam. Now, out of the factory, they're not necessarily perfectly sharp, so I always like to run them over a piece of sandpaper. And since you've got a bevel that's about a 45, I just always take them and start, I'm going to kind of do this backwards. I usually start this way and just run them around on that edge, just to take off any burrs or anything from the manufacturing process, to make sure that's a nice, clean, sharp edge. And that'll cut foam really well right there. When you get ready to cut a piece of foam with this, you have to make sure the foam isn't too thick for your cutter head. Real simple to do. You just take your foam and put the head, top of the head, up against it, and if the bottom, the blade, reaches the far end of your cutter, it's going to be thick enough. Let's see if we can do a little bit different angle there so you can see. So you can see that that cutter head clears the foam on the cutting side. Now, if you got something like an old yoga pad, say that's really nice high density foam, you want to cut it, but you put your top of the cutter head up against it, you can see that blade's not going to go all the way through. So we're going to have to cut this down thin enough so that that cutter head will reach and cut your plug out nice. Let me show you how to do that. One of the nice things about this hard foam is you can cut it with a variety of blades. This is a kitchen knife, like a frozen food serrated blade. That will cut really well. This tends to make a little bit more of a mess because it pulls more out and leaves you a rougher edge, but either edge of that will cut. if you happen to have any kind of woodworking saws, like a small Japanese fine tooth will cut really well. My favorite to cut foam is this bear saw. It's a woodworking Japanese saw. It's got a heavier tooth on one side and a finer on the other, and that will cut really smooth. And let me show you how to trim that down, the foam down. And to get a measurement on how thick we want to cut this foam, we're just going to take and put the plug cutter we're going to use on it, like that, and then just we want to go a little bit short of the length of the blade, so it's about like that. We'll make a mark and just kind of work our way down the foam doing the same thing, so we have a line to follow that tells us our depth. I might even mark around this side so I can see how I'm doing here, and we're going to go about like that on our cut. Now we can use, like I say, a different variety of stuff. My kitchen knife, I'm just going to start. If you want a smooth cut, if you really want this side to be super smooth, you can use the side for serrated and cut, and that'll give you a fairly smooth cut. And once again, I like to use this bigger blade Japanese saw because it saves me some time. It really saws fast through this stuff. And missed my mark on the front side there a little bit because the saw blade bends. And then we can always turn it, make the remainder of our cut top down. And we're off there. That's okay. Okay, so we've got a relatively smooth cut on the back side that we know most of this foam is exactly the depth we want it. Some of it's going to be a little bit shorter. That's okay. We'll trim that down when we go to make our heads anyway. Now, to use these cutters on our foam, we need some kind of a drill. This is a small desktop drill press, just kind of a generic that is fairly inexpensive. They run about $100. I use these on my fly fishing type stuff. You can pick them up. I think I paid like $60 for this at a jewelry show actually, and it works well. It doesn't have a whole lot of throw in the arm, but you don't need a lot for these types of plug cutters. You only need this much. The other way to do it is with a hand drill. This is an inexpensive Harbor Freight job. The thing you do need to have when cutting foam is you have to have a high enough speed. It has to run fairly fast. If you don't, you'll end up just more or less tearing the foam. So this job runs pretty quick. So that's enough speed to get us through and make these plug cuts. So let me show you how that's done first here with the hand drill. Then we'll do a few with the drill press. When you cut these out with the drill, you need to have some type of a backer board behind it, something smooth and fairly hard. This is, I think, a little piece of scrap maple, and you don't want the blades messing up your table. Now, I always put the flat side, the best side down, hold it down tight, and the main thing here is to stay as vertical as you can with the drill. If you start to go off to one side, you'll have a plug that's sloped on the front and the back. Sometimes you want that, but I'll show you how an easier way to do that here in a bit. So you just start up the drill to as high as it goes, and then you make a smooth punch down into the material. When you hit the bottom stop, pull it out. There's your nice cut little foam head out of high density foam. Same works for the yellow. Just start it up, make our cut. There we go. There's a yellow one. Now let's move over to the drill press. With the drill press, you want to make sure you put the plug cutter all the way up in the chuck and snug it down good. Now, there's one adjustment you need to make when you're using a drill press. You have to make sure that the cutter plug goes all the way down and touches the wood, which it does right there. So we're okay on that, because you want that to come through the back of the foam and hit the wood to smooth out the back part of the plug cut. Now again, you want to run at a fairly high speed, so we'll just slide this in until we get to a point where we've got clearance, but the closer you get to the top, the more length you get to the plug, the closer you get to the foam there on thickness. So I'm going to start this thing up. I do have it clamped down, but it gets a little loud. So I'm going to start as high as it goes and make the cut. Turn it off. Now by this running faster than the drill, this makes a smoother, almost a polished look to the head. It's a little bit cleaner cut than just using the plain old drill on it. But you can see that gives you a nice clean cut with a smooth flat side on one side, which was the bottom of our material, and then the top is a little rough because of this surface here, but I will show you how to get rid of that. So now we've got our foam cylinders cut, and if you've got an edge that's got some rough spots on it and you want that smooth, or you want a different shape to it, the easiest way to cut these is with a single edge razor blade. Now you don't want to take this and saw on it. If you saw back and forth on the blade, you usually wind up with little ripples on it. I don't know if you can see those very well or not, but little ripples. It's not bad. The easiest way to do it and get a nice clean, it's not straight, you can see that. The easiest way to get a straight, even cut is to just put your blade right on as square as you can. I'm looking straight down from above on this. Get the blade started a little bit, and then roll the foam back and forth and let the blade just work its way down through. I'm not sawing this way, I'm just rocking it back and forth. Once that gets down to the bottom, you usually got a nice clean cut. And I stopped in the middle, so I messed that up a little bit, but let's try that one more time. Saw a little bit and then rock it. There we go, perfect clean cut. Now say you want to have a popper head with a slant on it. Very easy again, just look straight down it. I'm going to tilt the blade. I'll go this way so you can see a little bit better. Tilt the blade and just rock and let the blade push down through it as I'm rocking it back and forth. Now you've got a perfect slope for a popper or a chugger, depending, or diver, depending on which way you put it on the fly. So now we've covered the material and hardware you use to make the popper heads. I'm going to take a bit of time to clean this up and get out the tying materials and show you how to put these on a hook and make a really good looking fly out of them. Stay tuned for part 2, and we'll be back real soon.